Part 1. Red Dust of Dry Gulch. The stagecoach lurched to a halt in a cloud of alkali dust, and Eliza Hart stepped down onto the packed earth of Dry Gulch's main street. The Arizona Territory sun bore down mercilessly, turning the air into a shimmering curtain of heat. She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and surveyed the town, a collection of weathered buildings huddled against the vastness of the desert like survivors clinging to a raft. "That's $2, miss," the driver called down, eyeing her riding trousers with barely concealed disapproval. Eliza handed up the coins without comment. She'd learned that defending her choice of practical clothing only invited more scrutiny. Let them stare. She hadn't traveled 800 miles from Missouri to worry about what frontier folk thought of a woman in pants. The main street stretched before her, flanked by a general store, a saloon called the Dusty Rose, and various establishments whose sun-bleached signs promised everything from fine dentistry to honest scales. At the far end stood the courthouse, a 2-story adobe structure that seemed to lean slightly, as if the very building had grown weary of dispensing justice. Eliza hefted her carpetbag and made her way to Murphy's General Store. A bell jangled overhead as she entered, the interior blessedly cool and dim after the blazing street. "Help you," the proprietor, a thin man with pomaded hair, barely glanced up from his ledger. "I'm looking for Mr. Murphy. I wrote about the bookkeeping position." The man's head snapped up, his gaze traveling from her dust-covered boots to her split skirt. "Yuri Hart." "Eliza Hart, yes. I was expecting—" He trailed off, color rising in his cheeks. "That is, when someone signs just an initial—" "You expected a man?" Eliza set down her bag. "I assure you, Mr. Murphy, my arithmetic doesn't require trousers with a front closure." Before Murphy could respond, the door burst open. A tall man entered, spurs ringing against the floorboards. Everything about him spoke of hard use, from his sun-faded shirt to the Colt .45 worn low on his hip. But it was his eyes that caught Eliza's attention, gray as winter sky and twice as cold. "Murphy," the man said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "I need that feed order." "Right away, Mr. Avery." Murphy scurried to the back room, leaving Eliza alone with the newcomer. Cole Avery didn't acknowledge her presence, instead moving to examine a display of ammunition. His movements were economical, purposeful, a man who wasted nothing, not even gesture. Eliza recognized the type from her months traveling west, men carved down to essential hardness by the territory's unforgiving nature. Murphy returned with a ledger. 40 sacks of grain, like you ordered, though with this drought." "I'll manage." Cole signed the receipt with quick strokes. "Having it delivered Tuesday, if the freight wagon comes through." Murphy glanced nervously between his two customers. "Mr. Avery, this is Miss Hart. She's, applying for the bookkeeping position." Cole's gaze flicked to Eliza, taking in her appearance in one swift assessment. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or was it amusement? "Ma'am," he said, touching his hat brim. "Mr. Avery." He turned back to Murphy. "You might want to check those numbers again, unless feed prices jumped 30% since last month." Murphy flushed, fumbling with his ledger. "Must be a mistake." "May I?" Eliza stepped forward, scanning the columns. "Here, you've carried the one incorrectly, and this subtotal is off by $12. She pointed to another entry. "And you've been charging Mr. Avery the premium rate, but this quantity should qualify for the bulk discount." Both men stared at her. Murphy's mouth worked soundlessly, while Cole's expression shifted to something approaching interest. "Seems you found your bookkeeper," Cole said dryly. He tucked the corrected receipt into his shirt pocket. "Tuesday, Murphy, and at the right price." The door had barely closed behind him when Murphy cleared his throat. "Well, Miss Hart, I suppose. That is, if you're certain you want to stay in Dry Gulch." I'm certain I want honest work for honest pay, Eliza replied. Shall we discuss terms? An hour later, Eliza emerged into the blazing afternoon with a position secured temporary, just through the fall roundup. But it was a start. She'd negotiated board at Sister Agnes's lodging house and even wrangled an advance for necessities. Not bad for a woman in pants. The street had grown busier. Cowboys lounged outside the saloon. Merchants hawked wares from wagons, and a steady stream of people moved in and out of the courthouse. As Eliza watched, a black carriage pulled by matched grays rolled down the street, parting the crowd like a knife through butter. The carriage stopped before the courthouse. A man emerged portly, dressed in a black suit despite the heat, with the soft look of someone who'd never missed a meal or worked a hard day. He surveyed the street with proprietary satisfaction, his gaze lingering on each business as if tallying assets. That's Judge Rourke, Murphy said from behind her, having followed her out. Circuit judge. He'll be holding court for the next few weeks. Something in Murphy's tone made Eliza look at him sharply, but his expression revealed nothing. She made her way to Sister Agnes's lodging house, a rambling adobe structure that had seen better days. The nun who answered her knock was younger than expected, with shrewd blue eyes and calloused hands that spoke of real work. Miss Hart, welcome. I've prepared the corner room. It catches the morning breeze. Sister Agnes led her through cool hallways lined with crucifixes and faded daguerreotypes. You'll find Dry Gulch a decent town. Mostly. We have our troubles, same as anywhere, but folk here understand the value of minding their own business. And if someone doesn't mind their own business, Sister Agnes's smile was thin as communion wine, then they learn quick enough why that's a mistake. That evening, Eliza ventured out to familiarize herself with the town. The sun was sinking toward the jagged horizon, painting the sky in shades of copper and blood. She passed the blacksmith's forge, where the ring of hammer on anvil provided a rhythmic backdrop to the day's end. A Mexican woman sold tamales from a cart, the scent of cornmeal and spiced meat making Eliza's stomach growl. She found herself in the town square, where a crowd had gathered. Judge Rourke stood on a makeshift platform, flanked by two men whose low-slung guns marked them as either lawmen or the other kind. Eliza recognized neither distinction mattered much in towns like this, and by the authority vested in me by the territory of Arizona and the United States government. Rourke was saying, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of political theater. I hereby serve notice of eminent domain proceedings for the advancement of the Southern Pacific Railway Company. Eliza scanned the crowd. She spotted Cole Avery near the back, his face carved from granite. Beside him stood a black cowhand and a Mexican woman whose bearing suggested education despite her simple clothes. And the following properties have been designated for temporary seizure, pending fair compensation as determined by this court: the Hobson claim, the Two Rivers Ranch, and... Rourke paused for effect. The River Bend Holdings, currently occupied by one Cole Avery. The crowd stirred. Cole didn't move, didn't speak, but something dangerous flickered in the set of his shoulders. This is legal theft, someone shouted. That railway line was supposed to go 20 miles south. Plans change, Rourke said smoothly. Progress demands sacrifice. Any landowner wishing to contest these proceedings may present their case at tomorrow's hearing. Court dismissed. The crowd dispersed in angry knots. Eliza watched Cole exchange quiet words with his companions before striding away. She turned to go, but found her path blocked by a well-dressed man with pale eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Pardon me, Miss Edwin Pike, at your service. He tipped his bowler hat. I couldn't help but notice you're new to our fair town. News travels fast. It's my business to know things. His smile widened. I provide various services, information, introductions, solutions to problems, should you find yourself in need of assistance navigating Dry Gulch's complexities. I'll manage. Thank you. Of course. He produced a calling card with a flourish. Still, One never knows when circumstances might change. Good evening, Miss. Eliza took the card without answering and walked away, feeling his gaze follow her. She'd met his type before, men who traded in secrets and leverage, who smiled while calculating your worth to the penny. Back at Murphy's store the next morning, Eliza threw herself into the books. The work was straightforward enough, but as she reconciled receipts and tallied inventory, patterns emerged. Certain suppliers charged rates that fluctuated wildly. Fees appeared and disappeared like desert mirages, and thread by thread, they all led back to the courthouse. She was so absorbed that she didn't hear the door open until a shadow fell across her ledger. "Find anything interesting?" Cole Avery stood before the counter, hat in hand. "That depends. Are irregular fee structures and mysterious surcharges interesting to you?" His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Mind if I look?" She turned the ledger toward him. He studied the entries, his face revealing nothing. "These court filing fees, they're twice what they were last year. 3 times, actually, if you account for the new administrative assessments." Eliza pulled out another ledger, which, coincidentally, appeared right after Judge Rourke was assigned to this circuit. "You've been busy." "I'm good at my job." This time he did smile, a quick flash that transformed his face entirely before disappearing. "Murphy know you're digging into this." "Murphy hired me to fix his books. That's what I'm doing." Cole studied her for a long moment. "Word of advice. Miss Hart, folks who dig too deep in Dry Gulch sometimes find things they wish they hadn't." "Is that a threat?" "A warning. There's a difference." He settled his hat back on his head. "Though I'd wager you're not the type to heed either one." Before she could respond, the door burst open. 3 men entered, trail dust still clinging to their clothes. Eliza recognized the type immediately, hired guns trying to look like cowboys, with clean boots and hands that had never roped a steer. Well, the leader drawled. "Cole Avery, Judge wants to see you about them seizure papers. Tell Rourke I'll see him in court tomorrow, like he said. He's wanting to see you now." The man's hand drifted toward his gun. "Wouldn't want you getting any ideas about moving cattle or destroying property that might belong to the railroad soon." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cole's hand didn't move, but suddenly he seemed to fill more space, danger radiating from him like heat from a stove. "My cattle, my property, until a legal court says otherwise." Funny thing about legal. The gunman grinned. "It means whatever Judge Rourke says it means." Eliza felt the violence building like pressure before a storm. Without thinking, she knocked over her inkwell. Black ink spread across the ledger and onto the floor. "Oh!" She jumped up, grabbing a cloth. "How clumsy, I'm so sorry." The spell broke. The gunman stepped back, scowling at the ink splashed on his boots. "This ain't over, Avery." "Never thought it was." They left, spurs ringing discordantly. Cole watched them go, then turned to Eliza. "That was either very clever or very foolish." "I found the line between those is thinner than most people think." She blotted the ruined pages. "Those men, they're not regular deputies. Are they?" "The Coyote Spurs. Rourke's personal enforcement. They show up wherever he holds court." Cole pulled out a bandana and helped her clean the ink. "You might want to reconsider that warning I gave you. And you might want to reconsider attending tomorrow's hearing alone." He straightened. "I can handle myself." "I'm sure you can. But from what I've seen in these books, Rourke's not planning to fight you with guns. He's going to bury you in legal procedures and fees until you can't afford to fight back." She met his gaze steadily. "You need someone who understands numbers, someone who can prove what he's doing." "And that's you." "That's me." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those winter gray eyes. "River Bend needs a bookkeeper for the fall season. Room, board, and wages. Interested." Eliza's heart jumped, but she kept her voice level.
When would I start?
Tomorrow, after we deal with Rourke. Then yes, I'm interested. He nodded once, settled his hat, and headed for the door. I'll send Jonah with a wagon for your things. Mr. Avery, she called after him. Why trust me? You don't know anything about me. He paused at the threshold. I know you're not afraid of powerful men. I know you see patterns others miss. And I know you're willing to spill ink to prevent bloodshed. That almost smile flickered again. Out here, Miss Hart. That's enough. The door closed behind him, leaving Eliza alone with ruined ledgers and the growing certainty that she'd just stepped into something far more dangerous than simple bookkeeping. Through the window, she watched dust devils dance down the empty street, miniature tornadoes stirring up the red earth, revealing and concealing in equal measure. Tomorrow would bring courtrooms and confrontations, but for now, there was work to do. She opened a fresh ledger and began transcribing the ruined entries, noting every suspicious fee and inflated charge. If Rourke wanted to fight with paper and procedure, she'd give him a war he wouldn't forget. Outside, the sun blazed overhead, baking the earth to ceramic hardness. But as Eliza worked, she noticed clouds building on the horizon, dark and promising, carrying the scent of distant rain. Change was coming to Dry Gulch, whether the town was ready or not. She smiled grimly and bent back to her numbers. Let it come. She'd weathered worse storms than this. Part 2. Dry river and tangled ledgers. The wagon jolted over another rut, and Eliza gripped the wooden seat to keep from sliding into Jonah Reed. The man handling the reins had said barely 10 words since collecting her from Sister Agnes's boarding house, but his silence felt comfortable rather than hostile. A river bends just beyond that rise, Jonah finally said, his voice carrying the soft cadence of Georgia despite the years of distance. Not much to look at, but it's honest land. As they crested the hill, Eliza caught her breath. The ranch spread below them wasn't grand, a collection of weathered buildings clustered around a main house, corrals patched with newer wood, a windmill turning lazy circles in the afternoon heat. But beyond the structures stretched grassland that rolled toward distant mesas, and a line of cottonwoods marked where the river should run. The river, she asked, noting the dusty channel. Been dry 3 months now. We're making do with the wells, but Jonah didn't finish. He didn't need to. Eliza had seen enough dried-up homesteads on her journey west to know what happened when the water ran out. The main house was adobe, thick-walled and cool. Maria Valdez emerged as the wagon pulled up, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. Her dark eyes assessed Eliza with the quick intelligence of someone who'd learned to judge character fast or pay the price. So you're the woman who made Pike's men nervous, Maria said. Good. They could use more nervousness in their lives. I spilled ink on their boots. Hardly a revolutionary act. Revolution starts small. Mija, come, I'll show you your room. The house's interior was sparse but clean. Navajo rugs softened the packed earth floors, and shelves held a mixture of books, medicine bottles, and equipment Eliza couldn't identify. Maria led her to a small room off the kitchen. Was the foreman's quarters before we lost him to California Gold, Maria explained. Cole sleeps in the barn more often than the house anyway. Man thinks a bed is some kind of surrender. Eliza set down her carpet bag. Through the window, she could see Cole in the corral, working with a young horse. His movements were patient, deliberate, speaking a language the animal seemed to understand. Known him long? She asked. 5 years, since my husband died. Cole hired me when no one else would take on a Mexican widow who knows more about healing than cooking. Maria's smile held edges. He collects strays, our Cole, the broken ones, the unwanted, makes us into something like family. And I'm the newest stray. That remains to be seen. Maria studied her. You have the look of someone running from something, or toward something, maybe both. Before Eliza could respond, Cole appeared in the doorway. Dust clung to his clothes, and sweat had darkened his shirt. Office is in the back room. Books are, well, you'll see. The office was a disaster. Receipts spilled from boxes. Ledgers lay stacked in precarious towers, and what might have been a filing system had long since surrendered to chaos. Eliza stood in the doorway, momentarily overwhelmed. Ben tried to keep it straight, Cole said, almost apologetically. But numbers weren't his strength. Haven't had time to hire someone proper since he left. Define proper. Someone who can make sense of this mess. Tell me if we're losing money and where. Eliza picked up a receipt, squinting at the faded ink. When's the last time you reconciled with the bank? Cole's silence was answer enough. All right, she said, rolling up her sleeves. I'll need coffee, lots of coffee, and somewhere to spread these out. Kitchen table's yours. Maria, Jonah, and I can make do. He turned to leave, then paused. That hearing's at 10 tomorrow. You still planning on coming? Try to stop me. That almost smile flickered again. Wouldn't dream of it. Eliza worked through dinner and into the night. Slowly, patterns emerged from the chaos. Riverbend was profitable, or should be. Cattle sales were strong, expenses reasonable. But fees and assessments bled money like a gut-shot deer. Court fees, filing fees, territory assessments, railroad survey charges for tracks that didn't exist yet. Finding what you expected, Maria set down fresh coffee, her third pot of the evening. Finding what I feared. Eliza showed her a column of figures. These assessment fees, they're targeted. Riverbend pays 3 times what the Hobson place does. 5 times the Two Rivers Ranch. Either Cole's very unlucky or someone wants this land bad enough to bleed him dry getting it. Maria pulled out a chair. May I show you something? She returned with a leather portfolio, spreading out documents yellowed with age. My husband's papers. He was educated, a surveyor before we married. He mapped this whole valley 20 years ago. Eliza studied the careful drawings. The river curved through the land in a lazy S, with River Bend positioned at the deepest bend. Elevation marks, soil notations, mineral deposits. Wait. She traced a line with her finger. This shows coal deposits under River Bend, and the best water table in 50 miles. Even in drought, the deep wells don't fail. Maria gathered the papers. The railroad needs coal and water. Rourke knows this. Does Cole know? He knows the land's valuable. Doesn't know how valuable. Maria hesitated. My husband believed in keeping some knowledge close. Said information was like medicine, helpful in the right dose, poison in the wrong hands. Eliza turned back to the ledgers with new understanding. This wasn't just about land. It was about what lay beneath. She worked until her eyes burned, documenting every suspicious fee, every inflated assessment. By dawn, she had a clear picture of systematic financial warfare. She found Cole at the well, hauling up water for the horses. The morning light caught the silver threading through his dark hair, the lines carved by sun and wind around his eyes. Coffee's on, he said without looking up. You get any sleep? Some. She hadn't, but that seemed irrelevant. I need to show you something. In the kitchen, she spread out her findings. Cole studied the numbers while Maria cooked breakfast, and Jonah cleaned his rifle at the far end of the table. They're strangling you slowly. Eliza summarized. Death by 1,000 fees. At this rate, you'll be bankrupt within 8 months, just in time for the spring railroad construction. Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. There's more. Eliza pulled out duplicates she'd found. These receipt numbers, they repeat. Different vendors, different dates, same numbers. Either half the merchants in 3 counties are using the same receipt books, or someone's creating false papers. Jonah looked up from his rifle. Wouldn't be the first time Rourke's court manufactured evidence. Can you prove it? Cole asked. Maybe I'd need to compare with the original vendor's books. But if we present this at the hearing— No, Cole pushed back from the table. Not yet. Rourke won't be expecting resistance today. Let him think we're rolling over. Meanwhile, you keep digging. That's your strategy, play dead. Sometimes playing dead keeps you from being dead. He stood, settling his gun belt. We should go. Rourke doesn't like to be kept waiting. The ride to town was quiet. Eliza sat between Cole and Jonah on the wagon seat, acutely aware of the rifle beneath Jonah's feet and the way Cole's hand never strayed far from his Colt. The morning had dawned hazy, with clouds building over the mountains like a promise the sky didn't intend to keep. Dry Gulch seemed subdued, fewer people on the streets, businesses opening late or not at all. The atmosphere felt like the moments before a thunderstorm, charged and waiting. Word spread about the seizures. Jonah observed, "Folk are scared. If Rourke can take Riverbend." "He can take anything," Cole finished. The courthouse was packed. Ranchers, merchants, townspeople all crammed into the stifling courtroom. Eliza spotted Sister Agnes near the back, her nun's habit a splash of black and white among the earth tones. Deputy Tom Harlan stood near the door, his young face troubled. Judge Rourke presided from the bench like a spider in his web, black robes spreading around his considerable bulk. Pike sat at a table to his right, shuffling papers with practiced ease. "The matter of territorial seizure for railroad development," Rourke intoned. "We'll begin with the Riverbend holdings." Cole stood. "Your Honor, I contest—" "Noted." Rourke didn't look up from his papers. "Mr. Pike, please present the territory's case." Pike rose, smooth as oil. "The documentation is quite clear, Your Honor. Survey reports show the optimal railroad route requires passage through River Bend. The territory is prepared to offer compensation of—" He paused for effect. $200. A ripple of outrage went through the crowd. River Bend was worth 50 times that, even without the hidden coal deposits. "That's theft!" someone shouted. Rourke's gavel cracked like a gunshot. "Order, mister. Avery, do you have anything to add?" Cole's hands clenched at his sides. Eliza could feel the fury radiating from him, carefully controlled. "That land's been in my family for 20 years. My father's buried there. You can't—" "The law says I can—" Rourke smiled, cold as winter morning. "However, I'm not without mercy. You have 10 days to conclude your affairs. Any attempts to move cattle or equipment will be considered theft of territorial property." "Your Honor." Eliza stood before she could think better of it. "I'd like to examine the survey reports, mister," Pike mentioned. The courtroom stilled. Rourke's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Eliza Hart, bookkeeper for River Bend." "This is a legal proceeding, Miss Hart, not a mathematics lesson." "Legal proceedings based on documentation. Your Honor, surely the defense has the right to examine evidence." Pike and Rourke exchanged glances. "The surveys are territorial property." "Then they're public record." Eliza kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Unless there's some reason the territory doesn't want them examined." The crowd murmured. Rourke's face darkened, but he was trapped by his own pretense of legal procedure. "Mr. Pike, provide the documents." Pike handed over a folder with obvious reluctance. Eliza scanned the papers quickly, her trained eye catching what others might miss. "These surveys are dated last month. So the territorial seal is the design adopted 3 months ago. Efficient of the surveyors to use a seal that didn't exist when they supposedly did their work." The murmur grew louder. Deputy Harlan stepped forward as if to speak, then stopped. Rourke hammered his gavel repeatedly. "Order, Miss Hart, unless you have proof of forgery." "I have questions. Your Honor, due process allows for questions." Eliza heard her old teacher's voice in her head. "When you can't win the game, change the rules. For instance, Why do these receipts for survey expenses match receipt numbers from completely different transactions? She pulled out her evidence, spreading it on the defense table. Same numbers, different purposes, either remarkable coincidence or... Enough. Rourke's face had turned an unhealthy purple. Miss Hart, you're treading on dangerous ground. Accusations of judicial impropriety. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm noting numerical anomalies that deserve explanation. She met his glare steadily. Unless the court prefers to proceed without addressing these irregularities. The trap was neat. Rourke could dismiss her concerns and look corrupt, or investigate and expose his own scheme. Pike whispered urgently in his ear. The court will recess. Rourke announced, We'll reconvene in 1 week to address these questions. Mr. Avery, your seizure is postponed pending review. His smile was pure venom. Use the time wisely. The gavel came down with finality. The crowd dispersed in excited clusters, voices buzzing with speculation. Cole gripped Eliza's elbow, steering her toward the door. That was foolish, he muttered. That was necessary. You've made yourself a target. I was already a target the moment I took your job. She pulled free of his grip. At least now they know we'll fight back. Outside, Pike appeared as if from smoke. Miss Hart, that was quite a performance. I don't perform. I do arithmetic. Indeed. His pale eyes glittered. You know, a woman of your talents could go far with the right connections. I might have opportunities that would better suit someone of your abilities. I have a position. Thank you. For now. His smile never wavered. Things change quickly in Dry Gulch. Today's employer might be tomorrow's cautionary tale. I'd hate to see you caught in unfortunate circumstances. Cole stepped between them. The lady said she's not interested. Of course. Pike tipped his hat. My offer remains open. Should situations evolve. Good day. He melted back into the crowd. Eliza noticed how people stepped aside for him, the way they might avoid a rattlesnake. We need to get back, Cole said quietly. Now. The ride home was tense. Jonah kept checking their back trail, rifle across his knees. They were halfway to River Bend when Eliza spotted the smoke. Fire, she asked. Cole urged the horses faster. They crested the rise to see the water tank beside the well engulfed in flames. Maria and 2 ranch hands were fighting it with buckets, but the old wood was tinder dry. They joined the bucket brigade, but it was hopeless. The tank collapsed in a shower of sparks and steam. Their main water storage, gone. At least they didn't burn the house, Jonah said grimly. Cole stared at the smoldering ruins. This is a warning. Next time they won't be so gentle. That night, Eliza found Cole sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. She joined him, noting the rifle propped within reach. I made things worse, she said. No, you bought us time. That's more than I managed. He was quiet for a moment. Why'd you stand up in there? This isn't your fight. Eliza considered her words carefully. When I was teaching in Missouri, I found discrepancies in the school board's books. Money meant for supplies vanishing into certain pockets. I reported it. She pulled her shawl tighter. They said I'd stolen it, forged documents to prove it. No one would hire me after that. That's why I came west. Running from lies. Running toward truth, or trying to. She met his gaze. I know what it's like to have everything taken by men who twist the law. I won't watch it happen again. Cole studied her in the starlight. You're not what I expected when I hired a bookkeeper. Disappointed? No. The word was soft, almost surprised. Not disappointed at all. A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another. The night wind carried the scent of sage and cooling earth. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but for now, they sat in companionable silence. 2 people who'd found an unexpected ally in the fight ahead. We'll need to dig new wells. Cole said eventually. Deeper ones, and find those original receipts to compare against Pike's forgeries. I have ideas about that. Sister Agnes might help, and Deputy Harlan seemed uncomfortable with Rourke's methods. Tom's a good man in a bad position, but yes, he might be an ally. Cole stood. You should get some rest. Long week ahead. Eliza rose to go inside, then paused. Cole, we're going to win this. He almost smiled. Your numbers tell you that. No, but sometimes the most important things can't be reduced to numbers. She left him there, rifle in hand, standing guard against the darkness. In her room, Eliza pulled out fresh ledgers and began planning their counterattack. Outside, the windmill creaked its lonely song, pulling water from deep places where even drought couldn't reach. Like truth, she thought. Sometimes you just had to dig deep enough to find it. Part 3. The Sunset Hearing. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Eliza barely slept, poring over documents by lamplight while Cole and Jonah reinforced the ranch's defenses. They dug 2 new wells, finding water at 40 feet deeper than before, but clean and cold. The burned water tank stood as a blackened reminder of the stakes. On the morning of the hearing, Dry Gulch felt different. More people on the streets, but they moved with purpose rather than ease. Riders had come in from outlying ranches, and wagons filled the lots behind the courthouse. Word had spread today wasn't just about River Bend. It was about whether the law meant anything at all in the territory. Sister Agnes met them at the courthouse steps. I've spoken with several merchants, she said quietly. Murphy, Blake from the hardware store, even Mabel Quinn. They're willing to testify about the receipt discrepancies if called. Rourke won't call them, Cole said. No, but we can. Eliza patted the leather portfolio under her arm. I found something interesting in the territorial statutes. In hearings involving property seizure, affected parties have the right to call witnesses. It's an old law, probably forgotten, but still legally binding. Deputy Tom Harlan appeared beside them, his young face set with determination. Miss Hart's right. Article 7, Section 4. I looked it up myself. Cole studied the deputy. Thought you worked for Rourke. I work for the law, or I'm supposed to. Tom's jaw tightened. Been doing some thinking this week about what kind of lawman I want to be. They entered the courthouse to find it packed beyond capacity. Men lined the walls, and more crowded outside the windows. The heat was already stifling despite the early hour. Judge Rourke sat behind his bench like a toad on a lily pad, sweating through his robes. Pike occupied the same table, but now he had company 3 men in city suits who looked as out of place as roses in a cactus patch. Railroad lawyers, Tom muttered. Came in on yesterday's stage. Rourke hammered his gavel. Order this hearing will reconvene on the matter of territorial seizure for the River Bend holdings. Miss Hart, I trust you've used this week to reconsider your enthusiasm for numerical irregularities. I've used it to gather evidence. Your Honor, Eliza stood, forcing her voice to remain steady. Evidence I'd like to present to the court. This is highly irregular. Under Article 7, Section 4 of the territorial statutes, we have the right to present witnesses in property seizure cases. She placed the statute book on the defense table with a satisfying thump. Unless Your Honor wishes to violate territorial law. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The railroad lawyers leaned together, whispering urgently. Rourke's face darkened, but he was trapped again by his own pretense of legality. Proceed, he ground out. Eliza called her first witness. Mr. Murphy, please take the stand. The store owner looked terrified, but determined. Under Eliza's questioning, he produced his original receipt books, comparing them to the copies Pike had submitted. These numbers here, Murphy pointed with a shaking finger. They're from sales I made to the Hobson place, but in Mr. Pike's documents. They're listed as survey expenses for River Bend. Could you have made a mistake? No, ma'am. See, I put a little mark, just a dot, by each Hobson sale. My own system. These receipts have my marks, but they're attached to different transactions entirely. One by one, Eliza called the merchants. Each told the same story. Receipts altered, numbers transposed, their bookkeeping twisted to support false charges against Riverbend. Mabel Quinn was the most damning witness, her saloon owner's memory for figures proving devastating to Pike's fabrications. I remember every drink, every dollar, she said firmly. These receipts, mister, Pike submitted their fiction. Bad fiction at that. The crowd grew restless. Someone shouted, "Let Avery speak!" Others took up the cry until Rourke was forced to restore order with repeated gavel blows. Mr. Avery," Rourke said through gritted teeth. "Do you wish to address the court?" Cole stood slowly. 20 years ago, my father started Riverbend with nothing but determination and a deed properly filed. He fought drought, Indians, and rustlers to build something lasting. Now you want to take it with paper and lies. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his neighbors. If they can do this to Riverbend, no one's safe. Your property, your work, your lives, all subject to whatever fraud powerful men decide to commit. "That's enough," Rourke snapped. "Mr. Pike, your response." Pike rose smoothly, but Eliza noticed sweat beading on his upper lip. "These merchants are confused, Your Honor, perhaps influenced by certain parties. I have affidavits from territorial surveyors, dated after they were supposedly written." Eliza interrupted, "Using seals that didn't exist, witnessed by men who were demonstrably elsewhere on those dates. You have no proof." "I have this." Eliza produced a letter, written by territorial surveyor James Holcomb, stating he never surveyed Riverbend for railroad purposes. He's willing to testify that his signature on your documents is forged. Pike went pale. One of the railroad lawyers stood. "Your Honor, perhaps we should recess to examine these claims." "No." The voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned as a small, neat man in a dusty black suit pushed forward. "No more delays. I've heard enough." "Who are you?" Rourke demanded. "Marcus Fillmore, federal marshal." He produced a badge. "Had some interesting telegrams about irregularities in this jurisdiction. Thought I'd come see for myself." The room exploded. Rourke hammered frantically for order while Pike gathered papers with shaking hands. The railroad lawyers were already moving toward the door, but found it blocked by 2 more men wearing federal badges. "Nobody leaves until we sort this out," Fillmore announced. He looked at Eliza. "Ma'am, I'd like to see those documents." What followed was less hearing than dissection. Fillmore went through the evidence methodically, his questions sharp as scalpels. Pike tried to maintain his smooth demeanor, but each lie tangled him deeper. When Fillmore produced telegrams showing Pike's history of similar frauds in other territories, the game was up. "Your Honor," Fillmore addressed Rourke with cold courtesy, "I'll be recommending a full investigation of this court. In the meantime, all seizure orders are suspended pending federal review." The crowd erupted in cheers. Men threw their hats, women embraced. And somewhere in the chaos, Eliza felt Cole's hand grip her shoulder. "Look out." The warning came just as one of the coyote spurs went for his gun. The courtroom exploded into motion. Women screamed. Men dove for cover. Tom Harlan's gun cleared leather first, his shot spinning the gunman's weapon away. Another spur member fired wild, the bullet splintering wood above Eliza's head. Cole shoved her down, his body shielding hers as he drew and fired in one smooth motion. Jonah was suddenly there too, rifle sweeping the room. The federal marshals had their weapons out, creating a crossfire that ended the fight before it truly began. When the gun smoke cleared, 2 spurs were on the floor, clutching wounded arms. The third had his hands high, eyes wide with fear. Pike sat frozen at his table, papers scattered like dead leaves around him. "Add assault on federal officers to the charges," Fillmore said calmly. He looked at Rourke, who seemed to have shrunk inside his robes. "Judge, I'm placing you under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, and about 6 other charges I'll think of by dinner." "You can't. I have authority." "Had authority, past tense." Fillmore nodded to his men. "Take them." As the conspirators were led away, the courtroom slowly emptied. Eliza found herself shaking. The reality of how close the bullets had come hitting her all at once. Cole's hand was still on her shoulder, warm and steady. "You all right?" "I think so." She managed a weak smile. "Is it always this exciting in Dry Gulch?" "Only on court days." Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. People milled in the street, discussing the day's events with the energy of those who'd witnessed history. Sister Agnes appeared with a flask of whiskey for medicinal purposes, which she passed around liberally. "How did the federal marshals know to come?" Eliza asked. Tom Harlan cleared his throat. "Might have sent a few telegrams myself. After our talk last week, seemed like someone should know what was happening here." Cole extended his hand. "Thank you, Tom. That took courage. Just doing what's right." The young deputy straightened. "Town's going to need a new judge. New ways of doing things. Might even need a new sheriff, if folks are interested in changing." "One thing at a time," Sister Agnes said. "For tonight, let's just be grateful justice prevailed." They gathered at the Dusty Rose, where Mabel Quinn declared drinks on the house, the saloon filled with ranchers, merchants, and townspeople, all celebrating the day's victory. Eliza nursed a whiskey she didn't really want, watching Cole across the room. He stood with Jonah and Maria, but his eyes kept finding hers. "Quite a show you put on," a voice said. She turned to find Marshal Fillmore beside her. "That was fine detective work with those receipts." "Just arithmetic." "No, ma'am, that was pattern recognition, seeing what others missed." He studied her thoughtfully. "Ever consider federal work Treasury Department could use someone with your skills?" "I have a job." "So I see." His gaze followed hers to Cole. "Well, if you ever change your mind, send word. Skills like yours are rare." As the evening wore on, the celebration gradually wound down. Ranch families headed home. Merchants closed their shops, and the town settled into quiet satisfaction. Cole appeared at Eliza's elbow. "Ready to head back?" She nodded. The ride home was peaceful, stars emerging in the darkening sky. Jonah drove while Cole and Eliza sat in back, the events of the day creating a comfortable silence between them. "You saved River Bend," Cole said eventually. "We saved it. All of us. Maybe, but you saw what needed seeing, did what needed doing." He hesitated. "My father would have liked you. He appreciated people who stood up to bullies." "Tell me about him." So Cole did, his voice soft in the darkness. Stories of a man who'd fought in the Mexican War, who'd brought his family west seeking something he couldn't name but recognized when he found it. A man who'd taught his son that the land didn't belong to them, they belonged to the land. He used to say that truth was like water, Cole finished. Always finds its level, no matter how men try to dam it up. Wise man. He was. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Eliza, what you did today, I owe you more than wages can repay." "You don't owe me anything. This was right." He turned to look at her, starlight catching his eyes. "Stay." "What?" "After the fall work's done, stay on at River Bend. I need someone who sees clear, thinks straight." He paused. "Someone I can trust." Eliza's heart hammered. "Cole, you don't have to answer now. Just think about it." They reached River Bend to find lamps burning in welcome. Maria had prepared a feast, and they sat around the kitchen table recounting the day's events. Even taciturn Jonah grew animated, describing Tom Harlan's quick draw. Later, Eliza stood on the porch, watching lightning flicker over the distant mountains. Dry lightning still, but the air smelled different. Change coming. Cole joined her, maintaining careful distance. Storm building. Good, the land needs it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching nature's light show. Inside, Eliza felt her own storm settling. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from or toward anything. She was simply where she needed to be. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "Through winter, at least, see what spring brings." Cole's smile was answer enough. Thunder rumbled across the valley, and the first fat drops of rain began to fall. They stayed on the porch, watching the earth drink deep, washing away the dust and leaving everything clean and new. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Pike's network might have other tendrils. The railroad would return eventually, and the work of rebuilding trust in law would take time. But tonight, with rain drumming on the roof and justice served at last, River Bend felt like the safest place in the world. "Come on," Cole said eventually, "before we drown out here." They went inside together, leaving the storm to do its work. In the kitchen, Maria had left coffee on the stove and bread warming by the fire. Simple comforts, but after the day's violence, they felt like treasures. Eliza pulled out her ledgers. Already planning, with the false charges dropped, River Bend could prosper. They could improve the wells, expand the herds, maybe even build that schoolhouse Cole's father had dreamed of. The numbers danced in her head, but for once they sang of possibility rather than peril. "Don't stay up too late with those books," Cole warned. Just a few more calculations. But she smiled as she said it. Some habits died hard. He headed for the door, then paused. "Eliza, thank you for everything." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her with lamplight, ledgers, and the sound of rain washing the world clean. She bent to her work, but her mind kept drifting to that moment in the courtroom when the bullets flew, when Cole had shielded her without thought or hesitation. Numbers could tell many stories, but some truths couldn't be reduced to entries in a ledger. Some things could only be felt in the heart, measured in the space between two people standing together against the storm. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, and River Bend settled in for the night, safe for now beneath the clearing sky. Part 4. Fire Night and Whispers by the Ashes. The lightning that had promised rain delivered only fire. Eliza woke to the acrid smell of smoke and Jonah's urgent shout, "Fire in the east pasture!" She threw on her clothes and boots, racing outside to see an orange glow painting the horizon. Cole was already mounted, shouting orders as ranch hands scrambled for tools and wet burlap sacks. "Lightning hit the dry grass," Maria explained, loading water barrels onto a wagon. "With this wind, it'll spread fast." Eliza climbed aboard the wagon without thinking. Maria shot her a look, but said nothing. Snapping the reins to urge the horses forward, they bounced over rough ground toward the fire line where men were already beating at the flames with wet sacks and shovels. The heat hit like a physical wall. Sparks swirled in the wind, starting spot fires wherever they landed. The cattle, penned in the nearby corral, bellowed in fear as smoke rolled over them. "We need to move the herd," Cole shouted over the roar. He and Jonah were already working to open the gates, but the terrified animals milled in confusion. Eliza grabbed a bucket, joining the water brigade. Her hands blistered quickly from the rope handles, but she kept going, passing bucket after bucket while Maria directed the effort. The smoke stung her eyes, making them stream. "Fall back," Cole ordered as the fire jumped a dry creek bed. "Make a stand at the irrigation ditch." They retreated, using the narrow channel as a firebreak. Men dug frantically to widen it, while others continued throwing water on the advancing flames. Eliza's world narrowed to the rhythm fill. Pass, empty, repeat. Her arms ached, her throat burned from smoke, but stopping meant losing everything. Just when it seemed the fire would overwhelm them, the wind shifted. The flames turned back on themselves, finding only already burned ground. The forward advance slowed, then stopped. Men cheered weakly, too exhausted for real celebration. "Keep watching for spot fires," Cole ordered. "This isn't over." They worked through the night, chasing down every ember, every smoldering sage bush. By dawn, the pasture was a blackened wasteland, but the ranch building stood untouched. The cattle, driven to safety in the west pasture, grazed peacefully as if nothing had happened. Eliza slumped against a fence post, her dress ruined, her hands wrapped in Maria's makeshift bandages. She'd never been so tired in her life. "You did good," Cole said, appearing beside her with a canteen. His face was streaked with soot, his shirt burned through in places. Most would have stayed safe at the house. Most don't have as much invested in Riverbend as I do. She accepted the water gratefully. "The ledgers are one thing. This," she gestured at the saved buildings, the surviving herd. "This is what the numbers represent. I couldn't let it burn." He studied her for a long moment. "You're not what you seem. Eliza Hart. Neither are you, Cole Avery." They were too tired for whatever conversation might have followed. Instead, they sat in companionable silence, watching the sun rise over the devastated landscape. The other hands were setting up a rough camp near the burned area to keep watch for flare-ups. Someone had brought coffee, and the bitter brew had never tasted better. "We'll need to move operations to the north section for a while," Jonah said, joining them. "Lost maybe 300 acres of grazing, but it could have been worse. Could have lost it all." Cole agreed. He looked at the assembled crew, his people. Eliza realized. His family of choice. "Everyone get some rest. We'll sort the rest come evening." But rest proved elusive. By afternoon, they'd set up a proper camp at the edge of the burned area, not trusting the fire to stay dead. As shadows lengthened, the group gathered around a carefully controlled campfire. Ironic, Eliza thought, after fighting fire all night. Maria had salvaged supplies for a simple meal. They ate in tired silence, the events of recent days catching up with them. First the courthouse fight, now this. It felt like the universe was testing their resolve. "My grandmother used to say fire was a cleanser," Maria offered, stirring the coffee pot. "Burns away the old to make room for new growth." "Rather have kept the old growth," one of the hands muttered. "Sometimes we don't get to choose what stays and what goes," Cole said quietly. "We just deal with what's left." As darkness fell, the hands drifted to their bedrolls, leaving Cole and Eliza by the dying fire. The stars emerged one by one, brilliant in the clear sky. Without the usual ranch sounds, no windmill creaking, no horses in the nearby corral, the night felt vast and empty. "Can't sleep either?" Cole asked. "Too much in my head." Eliza pulled her shawl tighter. "Keep thinking about those receipts, the trial, Pike's network. What if there are others? What if they come back?" "They might." Cole poked at the fire with a stick. "Probably will. Men like that don't give up easy." "And doesn't that scare you?" "Fear's just another calculation. Like your numbers, you factor it in, but you don't let it run the books." He glanced at her. "What scares you, Eliza?" The question caught her off guard. "Honestly, only way worth talking," she considered. "Being branded again, having my name turned to poison. In Missouri, after I exposed the school board theft, they made me out to be the thief. Forged documents, witness statements, the whole theatrical production. My word against pillars of the community." She laughed bitterly. "Guess which carried more weight? That why you run Keep Moving?" Moving felt safer than standing still. Can't hit a target that won't stop. She met his eyes. But I'm tired of running. Cole was quiet for a moment. I know something about that, about carrying weight that shapes every step after. He stared into the fire. The war taught me about following orders. My older brother Samuel and I joined up together. Thought we were fighting for something noble. Got assigned to different units. But we'd meet up when we could. He paused, and Eliza waited, sensing the weight of untold story. Last time I saw him, Sam's unit was ordered to take a bridge. Anyone could see it was a trap rebels dug in on both sides. No cover for approaching troops. But the general wanted that bridge for his report. Cole's voice roughened. I tried to convince Sam to refuse, delay, anything, but he believed in chain of command, believed the men in charge knew better. Cole. They were cut down before they made it halfway. Sam lasted 3 days with a belly wound. He threw the stick into the fire, watching it catch. After that, I had trouble with authority, especially the kind that spends lives for paper victories. Is that why you left the military? Among other reasons, came west where a man could build something without asking permission, where right and wrong were clearer. He almost smiled. Thought they were clearer. Anyway, they sat in silence. 2 people sharing the weight of old wounds. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling up to join the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. I used to teach the young ones, Eliza said softly. 8 and 9-year-olds, just learning their letters. There was this girl, Lucy Brennan, smart as a whip but poor as church mice. I was using my own money to buy her supplies, make sure she had what she needed. She pulled her knees up, making herself smaller. When the scandal broke, her father came to the school, said I'd corrupted his daughter's mind, filled her with ideas above her station. Wouldn't let her attend anymore. Her voice broke slightly. Last I heard, she was working in the match factory. Those little fingers that should have been holding pencils. Not your fault. My actions led to it. Same result. She wiped her eyes, annoyed at the tears. That's what I mean about being branded. It doesn't just hurt you. It hurts everyone around you. Cole shifted closer, not quite touching, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. You know what I see when I look at you. She shook her head. Someone who stands up when it matters, who spills ink to prevent bloodshed, who fights fire to save land that isn't even hers. He turned to face her fully. You're not branded, Eliza. You're branded by courage. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Eliza felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of guards she'd held so long she'd forgotten they were there. In the firelight, Cole's face had lost its usual stern cast, showing the man beneath the armor. I'm glad you're here, he said simply. So am I. The words came out whispered, carrying more weight than volume. Later, Eliza would remember the next moments in fragments the way Cole's hand covered hers. Calloused but gentle. The sudden awareness of how close they sat. The dying fire casting dancing shadows while stars wheeled overhead. The space between them diminishing until there was no space at all. When he kissed her, it was with the same deliberate care he brought to everything, thoughtful, thorough, as if she were a problem worth solving properly. She responded without thinking, her free hand finding his shoulder, feeling the solid reality of him through the worn shirt. They broke apart, breathing unsteadily. Something had shifted between them, invisible but undeniable as gravity. Eliza felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with physical proximity. Eliza, Cole started, then stopped. Words had never been his strength. She touched his face, feeling stubble and the grit of ash. I know, it complicates things. Everything worthwhile does. He caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. But I'm willing to figure it out if you are. In answer, she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. They stayed that way, watching embers fade to ash while the night deepened around them. Sometimes the most important conversations happened without words, in the space between heartbeats, in the choice to stay rather than run. Much later, as the fire died to mere coals, Cole spread his bedroll near the warmth and gestured for her to lie beside him. Nothing improper, they were both fully clothed, surrounded by sleeping ranch hands. But the intimacy of lying close under the vast sky felt more meaningful than any formal declaration. "The stars look different here," Eliza murmured, drowsy now that the adrenaline had faded. "How so?" "Clearer, like they're trying to tell us something." "What do you think they're saying?" She considered, feeling his steady breathing beside her. "That we're small, that our problems are temporary, but also that we're here, now, and that matters." Deep thoughts for someone who deals in numbers. Numbers are just another language. They all say the same thing in the end, that things add up or they don't. She turned her head to look at him. "We add up. Cole Avery. Despite all the reasons we shouldn't." He smiled, the expression transforming his face. "Glad your calculations work out that way." They drifted into sleep as the fire burned down to nothing, leaving only warm ashes and the memory of flame. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to human struggles but somehow comforting in their constancy. When dawn broke, they woke to find themselves covered with Jonah's spare blanket, the knowing kindness of a friend who understood that some nights were for healing. The burned pasture looked less devastating in daylight, ugly, yes, but already showing signs of what would come. Green shoots would push through the ash come spring, and the land would remember how to live. "Coffee," Maria appeared with the pot, her expression carefully neutral. "Please." Eliza sat up, trying to smooth her hair. She felt Cole's eyes on her but didn't meet them. Not yet. Some things needed the protection of darkness to grow strong enough for daylight. "We should head back," Cole said eventually. "Check the stock. Start planning the rebuild." They broke camp efficiently, the easy coordination of people who'd worked together through crisis. As they loaded the wagon, Eliza caught Cole's hand briefly, a touch that promised more conversations to come. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "None. You?" "Only that it took nearly losing everything to find what matters." They rode back to Riverbend together, the burned land behind them and uncertain future ahead. But Eliza felt something had fundamentally changed. She was no longer running, no longer just passing through. She was choosing to stay, to stand, to face whatever came next. The numbers still mattered, the ranch books, the calculations of profit and loss. But now there were other equations to consider, ones that couldn't be reduced to entries in a ledger. The arithmetic of the heart had its own logic, its own proofs. And sometimes, Eliza thought as Riverbend came into view, the most important things couldn't be quantified at all. They could only be lived, one choice at a time, one day after another, building something worth protecting from all the fires that might come. Part 5. The Black Seal and the Silver Dagger. 3 days after the fire, Maria found him by the creek, a stranger slumped against a cottonwood, blood seeping through his shirt. His horse stood nearby, foam-flecked and trembling. "Cole," Maria called, already kneeling beside the wounded man. "Bring water and bandages." Eliza emerged from the house as Cole and Jonah carried the unconscious rider inside. He was young, maybe 25. With the lean build of someone who lived in the saddle, his clothes were quality too good for a drifter. "Knife wound," Maria diagnosed, cutting away the bloody shirt. "Deep but clean. He's lucky it missed anything vital." While Maria worked, Eliza noticed something fall from the man's coat, a silver-handled dagger, ornate and obviously expensive. She picked it up, turning it to catch the light. There, engraved in the handle, S.R. "Cole." She showed him the initials. "Silas Rourke." His face darkened. "Check his pockets. Carefully." They found papers, maps, mostly, showing railroad routes and property boundaries. But one document made Eliza's breath catch a letter in Rourke's hand, detailing payments to the Coyote Spurs for services rendered regarding River Bend matter. "He's carrying evidence of Rourke's crimes," Eliza said. "Why would—" The stranger's eyes fluttered open. He tried to sit up, then gasped as pain hit. "Easy," Maria soothed. "You're safe." "No," he whispered. "None of us safe. They're coming." "Who's coming?" Cole demanded. "Rourke's men, the judge. He's not in custody." The young man coughed, specks of blood on his lips. "Escaped during transfer. Marshals, ambushed. I barely got away." Cole and Jonah exchanged grim looks. If Rourke was free, with his network intact. "What's your name, son?" Cole asked. "Daniel Morrison. I was clerk for the federal court. Supposed to deliver these documents to the Capitol." He gestured weakly at the papers. "Evidence for the trial. Rourke must have found out." "Why come here?" Eliza asked. Daniel's eyes found hers. "Marshal Fillmore said, if anything went wrong, find the woman who exposed Rourke. Said you'd know what to do with the evidence." Maria finished bandaging the wound. "He needs rest. No more questions." They left the young man in Maria's capable hands and convened in the kitchen. The documents spread across the table painted a damning picture not just of Rourke, but of a conspiracy reaching to the territorial capital itself. Railroad commissioners, territorial judges, even some federal officials. Eliza traced the connections. Rourke was just one tentacle of something much larger. "And now he's loose," Jonah said grimly, "with nothing left to lose." "We need to get these documents to safety," Cole decided, "and fortify the ranch, if Rourke's coming." "He won't come himself," Eliza interrupted, studying the papers. "Look at this references to Pike's contingency plans. Edwin Pike is still out there, and according to these notes, he has his own agenda." A shout from outside interrupted them. Tom Harlan rode up hard. His horse lathered. "Cole, we've got trouble. Strangers in town. Asking questions about River Bend, about her." He pointed at Eliza. "How many?" "6, maybe 7. Not typical gun hands, these are professionals. And there's more." Tom pulled out a folded paper. "This was posted at the newspaper office this morning." Eliza read it, her blood chilling. It was a wanted notice for her. Eliza Hart, wanted for embezzlement and fraud in the state of Missouri. Reward $500. "That's a lie," she said automatically, though her hands shook. "Course it is," Cole said flatly. "Pike's work, guaranteed. Trying to discredit you before you can testify." "It's working," Tom said reluctantly. "Some folks in town are already talking, wondering if maybe they were fooled." "Let them wonder," Cole snapped. Then, more calmly, "Tom, can you stay? We might need an actual lawman if this goes legal." "Already cleared it with the town council. Until this is settled, my job is keeping you folks safe." They spent the day preparing. Jonah and the hands set up defensive positions while Cole cleaned and checked weapons. Eliza worked with the documents, creating multiple copies of the most damning evidence. If something happened to the originals, the truth would survive. Daniel Morrison proved helpful once he could sit up. Pike visited Rourke in custody twice, he revealed. They spoke in code, but I gathered Pike had preserved certain assets Rourke wanted protected. Hidden accounts, I think maybe deeds. "Follow the money," Eliza murmured, cross-referencing numbers. Pike was Rourke's financial architect. He'd know where everything was buried. Night fell with no sign of trouble, but no one relaxed. They set watches, keeping the house dark except for Eliza's lamp as she continued working. Around midnight, Maria appeared with coffee and food. "You should rest," the older woman said. "Can't. There's something here I'm missing. Some pattern." Eliza rubbed her eyes. Pike's too smart to come at us directly. He'll use the law, twist it like before. Then we untwist it. Maria sat down. Show me what you see. Together they pored over the documents. It was Maria who spotted it, a reference to mineral rights separate from land ownership. Here, she pointed. Even if Cole kept Riverbend, these documents suggest the mineral rights were sold separately to a company called Desert Rose Holdings. The saloon, Eliza breathed. Mabel Quinn's saloon is the Desert Rose. You think Mabel? No, but someone used her business as cover. Eliza shuffled papers frantically. Yes, Desert Rose Holdings was incorporated by E. Pike, attorney at law. He owns the mineral rights to River Bend. On paper, but look at the date 2 weeks ago. While Rourke was trying to seize the land, Pike was securing what's under it. Eliza laughed, sharp and bitter. We were looking at the wrong crime. This was never about the railroad. It was about the coal. Cole appeared in the doorway. Someone's coming. Single rider, moving slow. They doused the lamp and waited. The rider came into view in the moonlight. Edwin Pike himself, hands visible and empty. Mr. Avery. Pike called. I come under flag of truce. Might we talk? Talk from there. Cole replied from the shadows. Pike smiled, teeth white in the darkness. Very well. I have a proposition. Miss Hart's unfortunate legal troubles could disappear. A word in the right ear, a few documents destroyed. She could be free to pursue her life wherever she chooses. In exchange for the papers young Morrison carried. They're unnecessarily inflammatory, bad for business, bad for the territory. I'm prepared to be generous, say. $2,000 and a clean slate for the lady. Not interested, Eliza called out. You should be. Pike's voice hardened. The alternative is less pleasant. Missouri authorities are keen to recover their wayward bookkeeper. Amazing how convincing forged ledgers can be when properly aged and presented. Like the ones you created for Rourke. Allegedly created, never proven. Pike shifted in his saddle. Miss Hart, you're intelligent. You must see the situation. Your word a woman already once accused against established documentation, who will believe you? I will, Cole said simply. That's enough. Touching, but sentiment won't stop extradition papers, or bounty hunters, or the dozen other unpleasantries I can arrange. Pike gathered his reins. You have until tomorrow night. After that, I'll pursue other options. He rode away, leaving silence in his wake. They returned to the kitchen, where Daniel Morrison sat wrapped in a blanket, pale but alert. I know that voice, he said. Pike visited the federal building several times, always had private meetings with Judge Thornberry. Thornberry, Eliza grabbed the documents. He's mentioned here authorized the mineral rights transfer. He's also, Tom Harlan said slowly, the judge who'd handle any extradition request. The net was closing. Eliza felt it tightening. The same suffocating sense she'd had in Missouri when lies became truth through repetition and official seals. We need to go on offense, Cole decided. Tom, can you get these documents to someone trustworthy in the Capitol? My cousin's a newspaper editor there. He'd love a story like this. Good. Jonah, take Morrison and half the evidence to Fort Union. The military prosecutors there are outside civilian jurisdiction. Cole turned to Eliza. You and I are visiting Mabel Quinn. Now it's past midnight. Best time for truth-telling. They found Mabel in her private rooms above the saloon, wrapped in a silk robe and suspicious expression. But when Eliza explained about Desert Rose Holding, the saloon owner's face went white. That snake, she breathed. I signed papers for a business investment. Pike said it was for importing French wines. You signed over your business name for mineral speculation, Eliza corrected, making you technically complicit in fraud. Mabel's vocabulary turned colorful. Then, what do you need? The incorporation papers. Anything Pike had you sign. Mabel disappeared into her bedroom, returning with a strongbox. I keep copies of everything. Learned that from my first husband. God rest his crooked soul. The papers were damning. Pike had used Mabel's business as a front for multiple schemes, all targeting properties with hidden value. Riverbend was just the latest. He played us all, Mabel said bitterly. While Rourke made noise, Pike made money. Help us stop him, Cole said. Testify to what you know. Honey, I'd testify to St. Peter himself if it meant putting Pike in a cell. They returned to River Bend as dawn broke, to find Maria treating a new patient, Marshall Fillmore, bloody but alive. Ambush failed, he gasped out. But Rourke's dead. Tried to shoot his way past the military escort. They obliged him with return fire. One threat down, but Pike remained, and he was the more dangerous for his subtlety. We need to move fast, Fillmore continued. I've got federal warrants coming for Pike and his associates, but they won't arrive until... The attack came without warning. Windows shattered as bullets flew. Men on horseback circled the house, firing steadily, not to kill to pin down, to terrorize. They're trying to burn us out, Jonah shouted, spotting torches. Cole and Tom returned fire while Eliza helped Maria move the wounded to safety. The battle raged, punctuated by shouted demands for surrender. Then, sudden silence. Pike appeared at the gate, backed by a dozen armed men. Last chance. Avery. The documents for the lady's freedom. Go to hell, Cole replied. Already found it profitable. Pike smiled. Gentlemen, burn it all. But before his men could move, new riders appeared. Tom's cousin from the capital, accompanied by federal troops and a man in a judge's robes. Edwin Pike. The judge called out, You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Your associate, Judge Thornberry, has been most cooperative in explaining your schemes. Pike's composure finally cracked. He went for his hidden derringer, but Mabel Quinn stepped from behind the troops, her own pistol steady. Don't even think about it, Edwin. You've played your last game. The arrest was almost anticlimactic. Pike's men scattered or surrendered. The corrupt attorney was led away in irons, still trying to bargain, to deal, to twist words into weapons. But his power was broken. The documents Morrison carried did their work, Fillmore explained later. Thornberry folded like wet paper when confronted. The whole network's unraveling. And the wanted notice, Eliza asked. Never legally filed. Pike's forgery, like we suspected. The marshal smiled. You're free. Miss Hart, free and clear. As the sun set over River Bend, painting the sky in the shades of rose and gold. Eliza stood with Cole on the porch. The ranch showed scars, bullet holes, scorch marks, but it stood strong. We did it, she said, hardly believing. You did it, following the numbers, seeing the truth. Cole took her hand. Pike was right about one thing. Sentiment wouldn't have stopped him. But intelligence and courage, that's different. It was all of us, the whole community standing together. Maybe, but you showed us how to stand. He turned to face her. Question is, will you keep standing with us? Eliza looked out over the land scarred by fire, tested by greed, but enduring, like the people who worked it, like herself. She realized, no longer running, no longer afraid of being branded. I believe I will, she said. After all, the books still need keeping. Cole smiled, that rare, transforming expression. Among other things. Inside, Maria was tending wounds and making soup. Jonah cleaned rifles while discussing the next day's work. Tom Harlan wrote his report, while Mabel Quinn poured whiskey and told increasingly embellished stories of her part in Pike's capture. Home, Eliza thought. Despite everything, or because of it, River Bend had become home. The numbers had led her here. But something beyond arithmetic made her stay, something that couldn't be calculated or entered in a ledger, but was no less real for its inability to be quantified. As stars emerged in the darkening sky, Eliza Hart, bookkeeper, fighter, survivor, finally stopped running. She was exactly where she belonged. Part 6. Mesquite Hill. The battle between law and justice. The morning of the hearing dawned clear and sharp, the kind of desert morning that made the air seem to ring like crystal. Deputy Tom Harlan had chosen Mesquite Hill for the proceedings' neutral ground, he'd said, where no one could claim advantage. The flat-topped rise overlooked the valley, dotted with the twisted trees that gave it its name. By the time Eliza and Cole arrived, wagons and riders already crowded the makeshift court area. Tom had arranged planks across barrels for tables, with the territorial flag hanging from a mesquite branch, a touch of official dignity in the wilderness. "Half the county's here," Jonah observed, scanning the crowd. It was true. Ranchers, townspeople, merchants all had come to witness what many called the real trial of Rourke and Pike's conspiracy. Word of Pike's arrest had spread, but the forged documents remained. The false charges still stood, and the railroad interests hadn't given up their claims. Sister Agnes approached them, a leather portfolio under her arm. "I've brought statements from the mission archives," she said, "proof that Riverbend's original deed predates any mineral rights sales. The church kept meticulous records." "Bless you, sister," Cole said with feeling. "Bless yourselves. You're doing the Lord's work, fighting thieves and liars." She looked around shrewdly. "Though I notice several parties aren't here yet." She was right. Pike was in custody. But his lawyers had arrived 3 men in city suits who looked profoundly uncomfortable in the desert heat. The railroad representatives clustered near their fancy carriage, conferring in low voices. But the federal officials Tom had summoned were notably absent. "We proceed anyway," Tom declared. "This is a legal hearing into property disputes and criminal charges. Marshal Fillmore deputized me to act in federal capacity if needed." He took his place at the head table, looking younger than his years but determined. "This hearing will examine evidence regarding fraudulent land claims, forged documents, and conspiracy to defraud. We'll start with the Riverbend matter." Cole stood first. "Deputy Harlan, we submit evidence that the mineral rights transfer to Desert Rose Holdings was fraudulent, executed without knowledge or consent of the legal landowner." He placed the silver dagger on the table, Pike's knife with Rourke's initials. "We further submit evidence of criminal conspiracy between Judge Rourke and Edwin Pike, including plans to use violence against lawful citizens." The railroad lawyer jumped up. "Objection! This is hearsay and speculation." "This is documentary evidence," Eliza interrupted, spreading out the papers Morrison had carried. Financial records showing payments from railroad funds to known criminals. Correspondence discussing illegal seizure of property. And this. She produced Mabel's incorporation papers. Proof that Pike used fraud to claim mineral rights he had no authority to sell. "The woman is a known fugitive," another lawyer protested. "Wanted in Missouri for embezzlement." "Those charges were fabricated." Marshal Fillmore's voice carried from the back of the crowd. He walked forward, dusty and travel-worn, but very much alive. "I've been to Missouri, spoke with the real authorities there. No such charges were ever legally filed. The wanted notices were forgeries, created by Pike to discredit a witness." Relief flooded through Eliza so powerfully she swayed. Cole's hand found hers, steadying. "Furthermore," Fillmore continued, producing a telegram, "Judge Thornberry has provided a full confession. He admits to authorizing illegal transfers at Pike's direction in exchange for bribes from railroad interests." The railroad lawyers huddled, whispering frantically. Their chief spokesman stood. "The railroad companies were unaware of any illegal activities. We acted in good faith on documents that appeared legal." "Then you won't object to voiding those documents," Tom said smoothly, "since they were obtained through fraud." "Now wait just a minute." The crowd stirred restlessly. Someone shouted, "Let Avery speak!" Others took up the cry until Tom was forced to restore order. Cole faced the assembly. 20 years my family has worked this land. We've fought drought, storms, rustlers, everything the territory could throw at us. We survived it all, but we nearly lost to paper, to lies dressed up as the law. He looked around, meeting the eyes of his neighbors. Every one of you could be next. Your land, your life's work, stolen by men who use the law like a weapon. That changes today. Sister Agnes stood next, in her clear, carrying voice. She read from the mission archives the original Spanish land grant that became River Bend, the legitimate transfer to Cole's father, the unbroken chain of honest ownership. Before God and man, she concluded, this land belongs to the Avery family. Any claim otherwise is bearing false witness. One by one, others testified. Mabel Quinn explained how Pike had tricked her into signing papers. Daniel Morrison, still pale from his wounds, detailed the conspiracy from inside the federal courthouse. Tom Harlan himself testified about the forged wanted notices and false receipts. The railroad lawyers grew increasingly desperate. "This is all very touching," their leaders said, "but emotional appeals don't change legal documents. We have contracts based on fraud," Fillmore stated flatly, "making them void. That's for a real court to decide, not this gathering." "Then let's make it real." A new voice spoke from the crowd. Everyone turned as a distinguished older man stepped forward. "I'm Federal Judge William Cartwright, from the territorial capital. I received some interesting documents by telegram and thought I should investigate personally." The railroad lawyers went pale. Judge Cartwright was known for his integrity and his particular hatred of corruption. "Deputy Harlan," Cartwright continued, "I'm officially assuming jurisdiction of this hearing. Please continue presenting evidence." What followed was systematic demolition. Eliza presented her mathematical analysis, showing how the fraud was constructed, layer by layer. Each forged receipt, each inflated fee, each false charge, she laid them out like an autopsy of corruption. "The pattern is clear," she concluded. This was an isolated crime but organized conspiracy, reaching from local officials to territorial administrators. The goal was simple: steal land legally, using the very laws meant to protect property rights. The crowd murmured angrily. These were people who lived by law and contract, who depended on honest dealing. To see the system corrupted struck at everything they believed in. "I've heard enough," Judge Cartwright declared. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm ruling all land transfers related to this conspiracy null and void. Properties revert to their rightful owners immediately." "Your Honor," the lead railroad lawyer tried desperately, "the railroad companies have invested significant capital based on these agreements. Then perhaps they should be more careful about verifying the legitimacy of their business partners," Cartwright said coldly. "Though I suspect investigation will show certain railroad officials knew exactly what they were buying into." It was then that the Coyote Spurs made their last play, whether from desperation or prior planning. 3 riders suddenly appeared on the hillside, rifles raised. "Nobody moves," their leader shouted. "Judge, you're going to reverse that ruling." Or, he never finished. Tom Harlan's gun cleared leather faster than thought, his shot spinning the rifle from the man's hands. Jonah's rifle boomed simultaneously, taking another gunman's weapon. The third tried to flee but found his path blocked by armed townspeople. "Seemed to have miscalculated," Cole said mildly, his own gun steady on the disarmed outlaws. "Forgot this isn't just about Riverbend anymore. It's about all of us." The gunmen were quickly subdued, adding attempted murder of a federal judge to their charges. The railroad lawyers, seeing which way the wind blew, began distancing themselves from any knowledge of criminal activities. Judge Cartwright restored order with effort. "I'm issuing federal warrants for any remaining conspirators. Property rights are restored, and I'm recommending a full investigation of railroad practices in this territory." He looked at the railroad representatives. I suggest you gentlemen return to your employers and recommend a more ethical approach to business. The days of stealing under color of law are over." As the crowd began to disperse, people stopped to shake Cole's hand, to nod respectfully to Eliza. The victory wasn't just personal, it was communal. A statement that law meant something only when justice backed it. "Miss Hart," Judge Cartwright approached. "That was exceptional analysis. Have you considered federal employment? The Treasury Department needs investigators with your skills." "I appreciate the offer," Eliza said, glancing at Cole. "But I have commitments here." "I understand," he smiled. "Though if you change your mind, I'll write any recommendation you need." As wagons began heading back to town, Marshal Fillmore surveyed the scene with satisfaction. "Good work, all of you. This kind of corruption thrives in darkness. You dragged it into the light." "Eliza did that," Cole said. "We just backed her play." "Don't sell yourself short." Fillmore replied, "Takes courage to stand up when the law itself seems corrupted. Takes faith that justice might still prevail." The sun was setting as they prepared to leave. Tom Harlan, looking older and more confident than he had that morning, stopped them. "Cole, Eliza, thank you. You reminded me why I put on this badge." "You reminded yourself?" Cole said, "We just gave you the opportunity." The ride back to Riverbend was quiet, but not somber. There was too much relief, too much vindication for silence to feel heavy. Jonah hummed an old spiritual. Maria smiled more than she had in weeks, and even Cole's stern features had softened. "It's really over," Eliza said, still hardly believing it. "This part is," Cole agreed. "Still have to rebuild from the fire, deal with the drought, make the ranch profitable again." "Cole Avery, can't you just enjoy victory for one evening?" Maria scolded. "I am enjoying it," he protested, "in my own way." That night, Riverbend hosted an impromptu celebration. Neighbors arrived with food and drink, turning the yard into a festival. Someone brought a fiddle, someone else a guitar. And soon music filled the air. Even Sister Agnes appeared, declaring that some occasions warranted celebration even by religious folk. Eliza found herself pulled into dancing, passed from partner to partner as the community celebrated not just Riverbend's salvation, but their own renewed faith in justice. When she finally escaped, breathless and laughing, Cole was waiting with a cup of water. "Enjoying yourself?" "More than I have in years." She accepted the water gratefully. "I'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of something bigger than survival." "You gave that back to us," he said seriously. "Showed us we could fight the system and win." "We showed each other." She looked around at the celebrating crowd, ranchers and townspeople, Mexicans and Anglos, former slaves and immigrants, all united in victory. This is what they really feared. Isn't it not any one person standing up, but all of us standing together? Powerful thing. Community roused to justice. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Eliza, I need to say something. These past weeks, working together, facing danger, it's shown me something I'd stopped believing in." She waited, heart suddenly racing. "Partnership," he continued. "Real partnership, where two people make each other stronger, not weaker. I had given up on finding that. And now," he met her eyes, "now I know what I was waiting for. Question is, am I what you were looking for?" Before she could answer, Jonah's voice rang out. "Riders coming, lots of them!" The music stopped. Men reached for weapons, but the approaching group carried torches that illuminated federal uniforms and a familiar figure at their head, Judge Cartwright, returning with a full escort. "Apologies for interrupting," he called out, "but I have warrants to serve and wanted reliable witnesses." He produced a sheaf of papers. Arrest warrants for 16 individuals, including 3 territorial judges, 2 railroad commissioners, and various lesser officials. The corruption ran deeper than we thought. "You'll need deputies," Tom Harlan said immediately. "I was hoping you'd volunteer. In fact, Cartwright smiled. I'm authorized to offer you a federal marshal position. Seems this territory needs lawmen who understand the difference between legal and right. Tom accepted with obvious pride. As the federal party prepared to continue their mission, Cartwright paused beside Eliza and Cole. You've started something important here, he said. Word's already spreading to other territories. People are examining their own courts, their own officials. Change is coming. About time, Cole said. After the federal marshals left, the celebration resumed with even more energy. The threat was truly over now. The conspiracy broken at its roots. Riverbend was safe, and more the precedent was set. Law could serve justice, not just power. Much later, as the last guests departed and quiet returned to the ranch, Eliza sat on the porch steps, watching stars emerge in the clear sky. Cole joined her, maintaining careful distance until she reached for his hand. You never answered my question, he said. About partnership, she smiled. Cole Avery. I traveled 800 miles looking for a place to belong. I fought fire and corruption and my own fears to stay here. What do you think I was looking for? He pulled her close then, and they sat together watching the stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges rebuilding, planning, the daily work of making a life. But tonight was for gratitude, for recognition of what they'd won and what they'd found. No more running, Eliza said softly. No more hiding, Cole agreed. In the distance, a coyote called to its pack not a lonely sound, but one of connection, of creatures finding their place in the vast darkness. At Riverbend, two people who'd thought themselves alone had discovered the power of standing together, of building something worth protecting. The stars looked down on a ranch scarred but not broken, on a community tested and proven strong, on a love forged in the fire of shared struggle. Justice had prevailed. Not through violence, but through truth, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of people who refused to let corruption win. It was, Eliza thought as Cole's arm tightened around her, a very good ending to a very hard chapter, and an even better beginning to whatever came next. Part 7. Late Rain and Open Doors. The rain came 3 days after the hearing at Mesquite Hill, not the violent thunderstorm they'd grown accustomed to, but a steady, soaking rain that lasted through the night and into the next day. Eliza woke to the sound of it drumming on the roof, a rhythm so foreign after months of drought that she lay still, listening, hardly daring to believe. It's real. Cole's voice came from the doorway. He held 2 cups of coffee, his hair damp from checking the stock. The creek's running again, not much, but it's flowing. She sat up, accepting the coffee gratefully. Through the window, the world had transformed. The burned pasture, black and desolate for weeks, now showed a faint green haze seeds that had waited in the ash for exactly this moment. Resurrection, Maria said from the kitchen, kneading bread with renewed vigor. The land knows how to heal itself, given half a chance. Over the next weeks, Riverbend came alive in ways none of them had quite expected. The rain continued intermittently, not flooding but steady enough to refill wells and start the grass growing. Word of the legal victory had spread, bringing unexpected visitors, ranchers seeking advice on challenging their own suspicious fees, merchants wanting to verify old receipts, even a few Eastern journalists eager to document what they called the people's victory over corporate corruption. Eliza found herself at the center of it, her mathematical skills suddenly in demand across the county. She set up a proper office in Riverbend's main house, teaching others how to read between the lines of legal documents, how to track patterns of fraud. You've become a regular crusader, Cole teased one evening, finding her surrounded by ledgers from 3 different ranches. Hardly. I'm just showing people what to look for. She rubbed her tired eyes. Though I may need spectacles soon if I keep this up. Maybe you should charge for your services. Some things shouldn't be about money. She looked up at him. Besides, Riverbend pays me well enough. About that. Cole pulled up a chair, suddenly serious. "I've been thinking about the future. The ranch is safe now, but it could be more than just safe. It could prosper." He spread out his own papers, plans for irrigation improvements, breeding programs for the cattle, even a rough sketch of a schoolhouse, with the water returning and the legal troubles settled. We could build something lasting, but it would take commitment, long-term commitment. "Cole Avery, are you asking me to stay permanently?" "I'm asking you to be my partner, in everything." He pulled out a small box. "I had this made from silver we found in the creek bed. Seemed fitting something valuable that was always there, just waiting to be discovered." Inside was a ring, simple but elegant, with a small turquoise stone set in silver. Eliza stared at it, her throat suddenly tight. "I know I'm not much for speeches," Cole continued. "But you changed everything, Eliza. Showed me that keeping books wasn't just about numbers, it was about keeping faith with the truth. Showed me that partnership meant making each other stronger, not safer." He met her eyes. "Marry me. Help me build something worth leaving behind." "Yes," she said, not needing to think. "Yes to all of it." The wedding planning became a community affair. Sister Agnes insisted on performing the ceremony, while Mabel Quinn appointed herself in charge of the reception. Maria took over the food preparation with military precision, and even Tom Harlan, now sporting a federal marshal's badge, promised to ensure no outlaws interrupted the proceedings. But first, there was work to do. The town council, reformed after the corruption trials, voted to establish a community water board with representatives from all the ranches and town businesses. They elected Maria as its first president, recognizing her late husband's surveys as the foundation for fair water distribution. "Never thought I'd see the day," Jonas said, watching Maria preside over her first meeting. Mexican widow running the water board. Times really are changing. "About time," Cole replied. Eliza threw herself into establishing what she called the Dry Gulch Mutual Aid Society, a cooperative where ranchers and merchants could pool resources for fair prices on supplies and fair wages for workers. The first meeting drew skeptics, but when she showed them the numbers, how much they'd save by cutting out corrupt middlemen, enthusiasm grew. "You're rebuilding the whole territory's economy," Marshal Fillmore observed during one of his visits. He'd made River Bend his unofficial headquarters while cleaning up the last of the corruption network. "Just applying arithmetic to community building," Eliza replied. "Amazing what happens when people see they're stronger together than apart." The schoolhouse went up with surprising speed. It seemed everyone wanted to contribute lumber from the mill, windows from a failed hotel project, desks cobbled together by local carpenters. Sister Agnes recruited teachers from her network of religious educators, but it was understood that Eliza would oversee the curriculum. "Practical education," she explained to the planning committee. "Reading, writing, arithmetic, yes, but also water rights, basic law, agricultural accounting, the skills people need to protect themselves and prosper." "Sounds like you're training a generation of troublemakers," someone joked. "I prefer to think of them as informed citizens." Eliza smiled. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, autumn having finally arrived to break the heat. The ceremony was held outdoors at River Bend, under a bower of cottonwood branches that had leafed out green with the recent rains. Half the county attended, transforming the ranch into a festival ground. Eliza wore a simple dress of cream muslin, practical, as always, but softened with Maria's embroidered shawl and Mabel's gift of pearl combs. Cole, uncomfortable in his one good suit, kept tugging at his collar until Jonah threatened to tie his hands. "Dearly beloved," Sister Agnes began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "We come together to witness something precious, two people choosing to bind their lives together, not from necessity or convenience, but from love and shared purpose." The vows were simple, promises to stand together through drought and plenty, to build something greater than either could achieve alone. When Cole kissed his bride, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in town. The reception lasted well into the night. Tables groaned under Maria's feast. Musicians played everything from Mexican ballads to Irish reels, and speeches ranged from touching to hilarious. Tom Harlan, emboldened by whiskey, performed a comic reenactment of the courthouse confrontation that had everyone in stitches. "To think," Mabel Quinn said, cornering Eliza during a quiet moment, "you came here just looking for temporary bookkeeping work. Life has a way of giving us what we need, not what we think we want." Eliza replied, "Philosophical marriage is already changing you." Mabel winked. "Though I notice you're still carrying that little notebook in your pocket." "Some things don't change. Numbers still need tracking." As the evening wound down, Cole and Eliza escaped to the hill overlooking the ranch. Below them, lanterns twinkled like earthbound stars, and the sound of music and laughter drifted on the night air. "Any regrets?" Cole asked. "Only that it took so long to get here." She leaned against him. "You?" "None, except maybe not hiring you sooner." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their community celebrate below. So much had changed since that first day when Eliza stepped off the stagecoach. The town that had eyed her with suspicion now claimed her as their own. The ranch that had faced destruction now stood stronger than ever. And two people who'd thought themselves destined for solitude had found partnership. "Look," Cole pointed to the eastern horizon. "Lightning, but far off. Someone else's storm tonight." "Let them have it. We've had our share." A month later, the railroad finally arrived, not as conqueror, but as negotiator. The new territorial administration, cleaned of corruption, had mandated fair dealings with landowners. The railroad needed water rights and coal access, and River Bend controlled both. "Name your price," the railroad representative said, sitting uncomfortably in Eliza's office. "Community water station," she replied promptly. "Built and maintained at railroad expense. Fair wages for any local workers hired, and mineral extraction only from the designated area, with restoration required after." "That's extensive." "That's non-negotiable. Take it or route around us." They took it. The signing ceremony became another community celebration, this time marking prosperity coming on their terms, not despite them. Winter arrived gently that year, with steady rains and even a rare snowfall that dusted the mesas white. The schoolhouse opened with 23 students, ranging from 6 to 16. Eliza taught mathematics 3 days a week, always ending with practical applications. "If a railroad offers to buy your water rights for $200, she asked her class, "what's the first thing you should do?" "Check the real value," chorused the students. "And the second?" "Get it in writing with witnesses." "Excellent. Remember, knowledge is your best defense against those who'd take advantage." One evening, as Eliza worked on the ranch books by lamplight, she felt the baby move for the first time. She gasped, hand going to her belly. "What is it?" Cole was instantly beside her. "The baby. I felt... Here." She guided his hand to the spot. His face transformed with wonder as he felt the tiny flutter of movement. Strong already, like the mother, or stubborn like the father. Probably both. He kissed her forehead. "Have you thought about names?" "Samuel if it's a boy, after your brother, Margaret if it's a girl, after my grandmother." "Good names, strong names," he smiled. "Though, knowing our luck, we'll probably get twins who'll argue about everything." "Don't even joke about that." Eliza laughed. "One baby who'll probably come during spring roundup is enough challenge." As winter deepened, life at River Bend settled into new rhythms. The expanded irrigation system, funded by the railroad agreement, meant they could plan for real agriculture beyond just cattle grazing. The Community Water Board met monthly, with representatives traveling from across the county to participate. The school thrived, with Sister Agnes reporting that literacy rates were climbing faster than anyone had expected. "You've done something remarkable here," Judge Cartwright said during a visit. He'd made a point of checking on the territory's progress personally. This could be a model for other regions facing similar challenges. We just decided to work together instead of letting others divide us. Cole said simply, "If only it were that simple everywhere." The judge smiled. But then, most places don't have an Eliza Avery teaching them arithmetic as a tool of revolution. Liberation, Eliza corrected. Revolution sounds so dramatic. Sometimes drama is what's needed to wake people up. As spring approached, bringing new calves and the promise of harvest from the experimental grain fields, Eliza often found herself on the porch at dawn, watching the sun paint the mesas gold. The burned pasture had come back thicker than before, the fire having cleared old growth for new. The creek ran steady, fed by mountain snowmelt and beaver dams the community had agreed to protect. "Surveying your empire?" Cole asked one morning, joining her with coffee. "Our empire, built on ledger books and stubbornness. Best foundation there is." He settled beside her. "Though I notice you've been teaching Maria double-entry bookkeeping, planning to replace yourself. Planning for the future, this little one." She patted her growing belly. "We'll need attention, and Maria has the mind for numbers. Just needed someone to show her the system." Always thinking ahead. Someone has to, especially now that Tom wants to establish a territorial bank that's actually honest. He'll need trained people to run it. Cole laughed. "From gunslinger to banker. That's quite a transformation." "No more than yours, from loner to community pillar, or mine, from runaway to—" She paused, searching for words. "To the woman who saved a town with arithmetic and courage," Cole finished. "We saved each other," Eliza said firmly. "That's the only math that really matters." As if in agreement, the baby kicked strongly, new life growing in a place that had nearly died, hope taking root where greed had almost triumphed. The ledgers were balanced, the future secured, and love had built something stronger than any legal document could destroy. River Bend stood ready for whatever came next, its people proven by trial, its bonds forged in the fire of shared struggle, and at its heart, two people who'd found in each other not just love, but partnership, not just passion, but purpose. The story of the West was still being written, but this chapter of justice over law, community over corruption, love over fear would endure, written not in official histories, but in the memories of those who'd lived it, in the lessons taught to children who would grow up knowing their worth couldn't be reduced to numbers in someone else's ledger. The rain had come at last, washing the land clean and bringing new growth, and with it, the promise that sometimes, against all odds, the good guys actually won. Part 8. Silver Ring and Red Dust. The wedding morning dawned with a light rain, not the desperate storms they'd known during drought, but a gentle blessing that left diamonds of water on every leaf and blade of grass. Maria declared it the best possible omen, while Sister Agnes quoted scripture about the rain falling on the just and unjust alike, though she was smiling as she said it. Eliza stood before the mirror in her room, adjusting the pearl combs Mabel had gifted her. The dress was simple cream muslin with minimal adornment, but the embroidered shawl Maria had worked on for weeks transformed it into something special. Through the window, she could see guests arriving wagons and riders converging on River Bend from every corner of the county. "Never thought I'd see the day Cole Avery took a wife," Jonas said, helping to set up tables in the yard, much less one who could outshoot him at the ledger books. "Love makes fools of us all," Tom Harlan replied, struggling with a bench. His federal marshal's star caught the morning light. "Though some foolishness leads to wisdom." Cole stood by the cottonwood bower they'd constructed, tugging at his collar for the 10th time. He'd never worn a suit that wasn't meant for court or burial, and it showed. But when the music started, Mabel Quinn's piano player had hauled an instrument all the way from town, and Eliza appeared. All discomfort vanished from his face. She walked alone, having politely declined offers of escort. "I came to River Bend on my own feet," she'd said. "Seems fitting to approach my future the same way." The crowd fell silent as she made her way through the gathered guests. Cowboys stood with hats in hand. Townswomen dabbed at their eyes, and children fidgeted in their Sunday best. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a community celebrating its own survival, its own triumph over those who would have destroyed it. "Dearly beloved," Sister Agnes began, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. "We gather today to witness something that seemed impossible just months ago, hope triumphing over despair, love growing in ground that appeared barren." The ceremony was brief by necessity. Clouds were building that promised heavier rain, but no less meaningful for its simplicity. Cole spoke his vows in his usual understated way, but his eyes said everything his words didn't. Eliza, normally so articulate with numbers, found herself struggling with tears as she promised to stand beside him through whatever the territory might throw at them. "By the power vested in me by God and the territory of Arizona," Sister Agnes concluded, "I pronounce you husband and wife, and may anyone who tries to tear apart what love has joined together answer to a higher court than any on earth." The cheer that went up when Cole kissed his bride could probably be heard in Mexico. Hats flew in the air. Jonah's harmonica launched into a joyful tune, and somewhere in the back, Mabel Quinn was already popping champagne she'd saved for a special occasion or the end of the world, whichever came first. The reception transformed Riverbend into something from a dream. Tables groaned under the weight of Maria's cooking beef slow-cooked over mesquite. Tortillas made fresh that morning. Pies from every woman in 3 counties who wanted to contribute. Musicians appeared as if by magic, Mexican guitarists, an Irish fiddler from the mines, even a former soldier with a trumpet. "To the bride and groom," Tom Harlan raised his glass, slightly unsteady after his 3rd toast. "Who proved that sometimes the pen really is mightier than the sword, especially when the pen is keeping accurate books." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Other toasts followed, some touching, some humorous, all celebrating not just a marriage but a community that had found its strength. 6 months ago, Judge Cartwright said, having traveled from the capital specially for the occasion, "This ranch faced destruction. This town faced corruption that went to its very heart, but you fought back with truth, with courage, and with the radical notion that people matter more than profits." He raised his glass. "To Cole and Eliza Avery, may their partnership inspire others to stand together against injustice." As afternoon faded to evening, lanterns were lit throughout the yard. Children chased fireflies between the tables, while their parents danced to music that blended cultures as easily as the community itself had learned to blend. Eliza found herself passed from partner to partner ranchers, who'd once eyed her with suspicion, now treating her like a favorite daughter. "You've given us something," old Sam Morrison said as they waltzed carefully around the other dancers. "Hope that the little fellow can win. That's worth more than all the ledger books in the territory." During a brief break in the festivities, Eliza and Cole escaped to the hill overlooking the ranch. Below them, their community celebrated points of light and music and laughter against the vast darkness of the desert. "No regrets?" Cole asked, taking her hand. "How could I regret the best decision I ever made?" She leaned against him. "Though I do wonder what would have happened if I'd taken that bookkeeping job in California instead." "You'd have been bored within a week. No corruption to expose, no ranches to save, no stubborn cattlemen to reform." "True, I do seem to thrive on chaos." She was quiet for a moment. "Cole, are you happy truly?" He turned her to face him. "Eliza Hart, Eliza Avery. I spent 10 years believing I'd lost my chance at happiness when Sam died. Thought the best I could hope for was survival. Then you arrived with your ledger books and your refusal to back down, and suddenly survival wasn't enough anymore. So that's a yes. That's a yes to today, tomorrow, and whatever comes after." He kissed her gently. "Now come on. Maria will send a search party if we miss the cake cutting." The party continued late into the night. Stories were told and retold, the courthouse confrontation growing more dramatic with each telling. Pike's villainy reaching Shakespearean proportions. Eliza's mathematical prowess elevated to near mystical status. By next year, they'll have me calculating the weather, she laughed to Maria. You changed the weather, Maria replied seriously. The rain came after justice was served. My grandmother would call that power. As midnight approached, the newlyweds made their farewells. They weren't going far, just to the small cabin Cole had built by the creek, close enough to the main house for safety, but private enough for a proper honeymoon. As they walked hand in hand through the darkness, serenaded by distant music and coyote songs, Eliza felt the weight of the past months finally lifting. We did it, she said softly. We really did it. You did it. I just tried to keep up. Cole Avery, you stood between me and bullets. You believed me when no one else would. You gave me a home when I'd forgotten what that meant. She stopped walking, making him face her. We did this together. That's the only truth that matters. The year after, River Bend flourished in ways none of them had quite imagined. The railroad water station became a gathering point for the territory, bringing business and connection without the corruption that had threatened before. The school expanded to 2 rooms and 3 teachers, with students coming from as far as 50 miles away to learn. Eliza, now heavily pregnant, still taught mathematics twice a week, her lessons always returning to practical applications. Remember, she told her students, numbers tell stories. Learn to read them, and you'll never be fooled by false documents or crooked dealings. The Dry Gulch Mutual Aid Society had grown into a full cooperative, with members pooling resources for better prices and fair wages. Other towns sent representatives to learn how it worked, taking the model back to their own communities. You've started something, Marshal Fillmore said during one of his visits. Word spread all the way to Washington. They're calling it the Dry Gulch Model, proof that communities can prosper without exploitation. We just did what needed doing, Cole replied, but Eliza could see the pride in his eyes. The baby came during spring roundup. As predicted, a daughter with her mother's sharp gaze and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Margaret, after Eliza's grandmother. But within days, everyone was calling her Maggie. She's perfect, Sister Agnes declared, holding the baby while Eliza recovered, though I suspect she'll be keeping books before she can properly walk. Wouldn't surprise me, Cole said, watching his daughter with wonder. Her mother was probably calculating percentages in the womb. Life settled into new rhythms. The ranch prospered, the community grew stronger, and slowly the wounds left by corruption healed. The burned pasture bloomed with wildflowers that first spring, as if the land itself celebrated renewal. Tom Harlan, now a senior federal marshal, established the territory's first truly honest bank, with Maria as his chief accountant. Turns out, he said with a grin, fighting corruption pays better than enabling it. Who knew? Mabel Quinn expanded her saloon into a proper hotel, declaring that all these visiting journalists and government folks need somewhere decent to stay. She named it the Silver Dollar Inn, in honor of honest money honestly earned. One evening, as Eliza sat on the porch with Maggie sleeping in her arms, she watched Cole working with a young horse in the corral. Jonah offered guidance while several local boys watched, learning the patient way of gentling rather than breaking. Content, Maria asked, joining her with coffee. More than I ever thought possible. Eliza adjusted the baby's blanket. A year ago, I was running from place to place, sure that settling meant surrendering. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. The land has a way of claiming those it needs, Maria said, and River Bend needed someone who could see beyond the surface to the truth beneath. It needed all of us. You, Jonah, Tom, Sister Agnes, even Mabel in her way. We each brought what was necessary. But you brought the courage to act. That made the difference. As sunset painted the mesas in shades of rose and gold, riders appeared on the horizon, not threats now, but neighbors coming for the weekly water board meeting. The community that had once gathered in fear now assembled in purpose. building something that would outlast any of them. "Time to go in," Cole said, appearing at her elbow. "Getting cold for the little one." Inside, the house glowed with lamplight. The table that had once been covered with evidence of corruption now held plans for a new irrigation system, proposals for a library, and ideas for next year's crops. The future spread before them not as possibility, but as promise. Later, as they prepared for bed, Eliza paused by the window. In the distance, she could see lights from town, from neighboring ranches, from the railroad station that brought connection without conquest, all of it linked by threads of trust rebuilt from the ashes of corruption. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That we don't just belong to each other, we belong to this place, these people. We're part of something bigger than ourselves." Scared. "No, grateful." She turned in his arms. "My whole life I was looking for where I fit. Turns out I had to help build it first. Good thing you're handy with a ledger book then. Good thing I found a partner worth building with." They stood together, watching the stars emerge one by one, brilliant in the clear desert air. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, always did in the territory. But tonight, River Bend stood strong, its people united, its future bright as the stars overhead. The story of the frontier was still being written, but this chapter of justice prevailing. Love conquering fear, and community triumphing over corruption would endure, not in history books or official records, but in the lives of children who would grow up knowing their worth, in communities that understood their strength, in the simple truth that sometimes, against all odds, good people standing together could change everything. In the bedroom, little Maggie stirred and cried. Eliza went to tend her daughter, this new life that would grow up in a world made better by struggle and sacrifice. As she held the baby, she whispered the same promise she'd made to Cole, to River Bend, to herself. "We belong here. We belong to each other, and that's all the arithmetic that matters." The lamp burned low as the family settled for the night, 3 lives intertwined. A ranch saved. A community reborn. Outside, coyotes sang to the moon. The creek murmured its ancient song, and the land itself seemed to breathe easier, knowing it was finally in the hands of those who loved it more than gold. The end of one story, the beginning of everything else. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, justice, and survival in the Old West. I hope Eliza and Cole's journey touched your heart as much as it did mine. I'd love to know where you're listening from, whether it's during your commute, while working, or cozied up at home. Please share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know which part of the story resonated with you most. If you enjoyed this tale from the Wild West, please subscribe to Wild West Night Channel for more stories of courage, romance, and adventure from America's frontier. Don't forget to like this video and hit the hype button to help more people discover these stories of the human spirit triumphing against all odds. Your support means the world and helps keep these tales of the Old West alive for everyone to enjoy. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward the sunset, and remember, sometimes the greatest treasures aren't gold or silver, but the communities we build and the love we find along the trail. Happy trails.